So I've gotten as far as my plot field, and I've gotten as far as thinking about exactly what I want the player, role to be in terms of adding to it, because they're going to be playing characters in it. Either they make them up themselves or they jump off of some springboards that I give or whatever it is, but they're going to be making up and playing characters in it. And then I say some things. So we start right before they do whatever it is they're going to be doing in terms of making stuff up and or playing, and I say some things. I set a standard or a jumping off point for them so that when I say something, it gets reincorporated not into the void of their head and God knows what comes back out. And then the next thing we know, their character is a killer clown.
Mhm.
No, it comes
Right,
back
right.
out in a fashion of confirmation that they heard me. It might not be anything I quite expected, which is probably good actually if it's not, but
Yeah,
it's as
that's
if
that's psychic
you
content.
say, right, but you say, wow, in a better world I could have thought of that, or I am so glad you said that, and I am happy that you are the person sitting there, because any other person could have come up with something else, but I am actually really glad that you are the person sitting there. And you internalize what they said without even thinking about it, and the next thing you know, you're interacting with what they said or using elements of
Yes,
what they said.
yes, and
Right.
I want
What?
to, I want to, yes, I want to, yes, and you. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
at this point, the writer's room metaphor comes back into play, and I have a bit near the end of the book where I explain what I mean by the writer's room. But if you're the runner on a show, right? Uh, and you've got a bunch of writers, and each, let's say you're doing it soap opera style, because this is what it is. In many soap operas, there's each writer has one character that they're basically is their character that they're in charge of. Soap operas are often written this way, so role playing games share that with them. This is the way that I see the room. Now, you're the showrunner, the GM. You've got these writers. Do you want to clip their wings? No. Do you want to tell them what to do? No. You want them to do their job. Your writers are fucking creative
Right.
geniuses. That's
Exactly.
why they
Yep.
got the job, right?
Right. That's
That's
or
why
that's why
they're
you've
there.
invited to play with them. Yes, I get all that. That's good. That's
Yeah.
a good way to look at it. But as I think we're agreeing, something's got to get up there on the whiteboard, or something has to come out, vocally, which is a way for them to
Motivation.
understand
It's,
what you say. We'll leave the motivation out. They're
are,
totally motivated, but we're talking
are
about
we
the
there yet?
content. We're talking about the content. You said,
No,
okay,
I'm talking about motivation. I'm talking about diegetic motivation.
okay,
Their characters need to be motivated just
right.
as
Oh,
the
diegetic.
NPCs are.
Yes. Okay. No, I completely get that. But I think I'm going to trust these people as capable of it. And if I tell them not to, they'll do it anyway. Right. They're those kind of people.
Uh,
So
okay, good.
with this in hand, yeah, I mean, I've had good experiences with GMs when I'm a player and bad experiences with GMs when I'm a player. The latter sometimes is because I've made a bad judgment or, was a dick or something. But sometimes it's because I have the temerity to play my character. And I don't mean in some kind of toxic way. My I just decided my character's a sadist, so he does this. No, I mean, I'm just having my character walk and talk, which to this
Uh,
GM is threatening. It's threatening. If I have my character walk and talk, then God knows what's going to happen next, and that's very threatening
oh,
to me,
no,
right?
no,
So,
no. The only
right. So
the
we're
only
not
reason
right.
that threatens me is
Mm-hmm.
because it's boring television.
Mm-hmm. Well, I didn't say walking where or talking about what. Let's
Yeah.
just say it's something cool, but or something that I like and that is
If it's cool,
easily
then I want
incorporated.
you. Then
Right.
I want you to do it.
Right.
Then you
That's
are
what I'm
my
saying.
genius. You're
Right. That's what I'm
you're my
saying. We're
genius
in a
writer, and I
state.
want you to do it.
Right. We're in a state where this is a given. What in this instance that we're talking about, what would I do at that point? And I'll tell you, because I'm the one who chose Vikings Valhalla, I would talk in a fashion that really punched home daily life stuff. what do you, I mean,
Hmm.
in this low tech environment, in this, kind of society, what are tasks you have to, to do? It's not Hollywood, it's not Hollywood Vikings. It's not, Saturday morning cartoon Vikings. It is instead, I want to give this a certain weight, a sort of sense of environmental experience. So I would say a
Yeah.
couple of
I,
things about people doing things around the landscape. And
yeah.
then I would say, okay, make up your characters. And I
That's
probably
pretty cool.
would, right? Mm-hmm.
Now something what I find cool about this is the idea of doing it prior to CareGen,
Mm-hmm. A little
because
bit, just a little
honestly,
bit,
I don't.
right?
Yeah, because I do actually because I can't really think of any better way. So intuitively, I guess, I do begin probably every campaign with what you might describe as a flyover shot.
Right.
Think of, Tim Burton movies. The title opening sequence of any Tim Burton movie, right? The camera's flying over the town. You're seeing characters doing things. You don't know them yet, but
Right.
you see a lot. You soak in
Mm-hmm.
the mood of the entire town, right?
Right.
And I start all my campaigns that way, but what I find interesting is the idea of doing it prior to CareGen. That's pretty cool.
There is something that I've been doing a lot lately, not with all games, because I think these sequential steps we're talking about are not generic. They are, I know people don't like this, they're rules. They're the rules by which you're playing at this moment. So, right?
I
So,
got in a rules argument with some dude online a couple days ago, and at one point, this is just one of those alt right assholes who really hates the fact that I used the word
why do you
triggered
even,
in
yeah,
an.
why do you even talk to these people? But go on, go ahead.
It's my thread. It's my thread, man.
Okay, go on.
So
But
at a
back to the
certain point, he
conversation.
goes,
Yes.
he goes, these guys love saying this. He goes, "Oh, I see what your problem is." I'm like, okay, tell me what their problem is. You like telling people what to do. And I said, they are called rule books.
Right. Right. The although I will slightly vary their point, and I'm distinguishing between texts in a book with what we are actually doing. And as a game designer at the moment, it's easy to think of those two things as the same thing. But the fact is, it's not a rule until we are actually respecting and enjoying it and using it, right? So, and say, oh, this is how we want to do it. The book says this, let's do it this way. And then it kind of catches fire. And you're like, oh, so this is what we do. Okay, next time this comes up, this is how we do it. And it may be that we get it wrong, we misread the book. It may be that our interpretation tweaks it in some way the author doesn't expect. It may be that we say, this blows, let's do it this way instead. And we just do that from now on. But whatever it is your group
Yeah.
is into about how we do this, that's really the rule for this group at this time playing now. So
And
with
again, sorry, and I keep injecting shit, but I just want to like, I need to make sure that I know, right?
yeah,
So I keep injecting shit. The core is an acronym. It's Creative
yep,
Options Role Playing Engine. The CO means Creative Options, and literally these are optional mechanics. So
of course.
throughout the book,
Mm-hmm.
you'll find all these mechanics are plug and play.
I totally get that.
So when you talk about the rule, it's also like the rules themselves are written in such a way as to say you can ignore this
I
part,
get that, but let's get to that a little bit later when we do dig into system, probably in a different session. If and when we have a new session. But right now, I'm talking specifically about this time. This time, the fact that the various different rules are modular. That's the word I want. The fact that the rules are modular is not important because we're settled now on our own lunchbox of the modules. So we're doing
Mm-hmm.
that. And before we do that, though, let's examine that flyover. Um, Sometimes the flyover can be very geographic, much in the way that you and I have just been describing. Other times it may be somewhat more, disconnected or strange, right? Not as literal. A
Mm-hmm.
third way might be very event oriented. We say very little about the precise, maybe just a couple of keywords about what we might think of as setting, but there's an event, right, that is part of, this plot field that has occurred. Um,
Mhm.
with so it can be lots of different ways. But the point is that something has to be done. It both has content of some kind, and it has tone, mood. If we really want to be really picky about the terminology, you've literally created almost your own language or parameters of language use with this. Now, they can perhaps expand or be altered or, shift around a bit as play continues, as we find our feet with the different contributors as we go. But we've got somewhere to start from. That right there then is a critical step in terms of what to do. Once as you rightly say, once playable character pieces or components of character are in hand, play just freaking begins at that point. I mean, you just begin.
Right,
And
because just
right.
like the
Mhm.
NPCs, the PCs have a motivation. So
Sure.
one of the steps in character design is
Right.
creating a life shaper. You need
Mhm.
at least two life shapers. One of them is a motivator, the other is a complicator. You may have more if you wish. So right off the bat, before you've
Mhm.
even begun playing, you've already started thinking about this character in a
Sure.
sense of psychology. Like, what does this guy want?
Right. Now, note that if you're not tuned into that introductory presentation, then you're going to find people kind of doing what I call button punching, right? They're just punching shit in that really doesn't. I mean, and they'll find out later whether it fits in or not. Sometimes that's okay, but a lot of the time that just falls on people just kind of falling back on a habit or otherwise not connecting, right?
Well, the
The
minimum viable contribution. There lots of people
right.
put up the minimum viable contribution, but you know what? Here's what I find
Well, the
practically, and this
viability
is
is
not
what.
part of the rule.
Go ahead. What?
Right. Yeah, viability is a questionable word, but my
Oh,
point is that here's what I observe, right? And this is not about the rules of the game. This is just my observation on the topic. As long as you have one person in the world who feels that inspiration that you're talking about, one player at the table, then it's not only fine, but in some ways preferable for the others to be button pushers
hmm.
because then you can focus on that one person who becomes, you know, how many TV series is like there's an episode that just focuses on Lisa Simpson
Hmm.
and all the other characters kind of become secondary. And
Right.
that is actually a very good episode. So it's fine as long as you've got full immersion, buy-in, inspiration, whatever word you want, from one player at the table, then they will be the lead character. And the others
Hmm.
can be relied on
I think you're
as
confounding two
as
variables.
well, my point is that
Hmm.
even if you get a person who's merely pushes the buttons or merely phones it in, it's okay as long as there's one person at the table who does more than that. Because then it's okay
Hmm.
for the other characters to play what ends up being supporting roles. It's okay.
To be discussed, I think. Um, to be discussed. And
Hey, you get what you put in is
no,
what I'm
right.
saying.
I,
And if
I
you
see. Right.
right,
Well, to be discussed, and we can hold off a little bit. There are parts of what you're saying that I think are working really well for me, and I'm thinking that other things I want to say are probably rabbit holes or clarifiers of some kind that aren't all that
I'm,
important right
you-
now.
I'm
What,
sure
what,
they are.
what
I'm sure they
matters?
are
Yeah.
because
What?
I
Mhm.
need more coffee right now.
Well, hold
That's how
on.
much of a rabbit
I'm
hole we're in.
getting major right now. I'm getting major family pressure.
Oh,
The people are like
okay,
looking
that's
in the
more
door and
important.
sighing, and I think that I'm probably going against some family expectations to continue. At this point, the
All right, that's
question
like a million o'clock
I know,
for you.
yeah, well, it's getting there. Here's my thing. One,
Okay.
we're discussing the pedagogy of play. We're talking about the things you actually do in that could be seen as simply the stepwise motion from not playing to playing. And that's really where we focus today. And what I want to say is that this is where your current play and attention should should be should be drawn. You should be saying, next time I play this, I'll just keep an eye. I'll just put myself on my own shoulder and keep an eye on what I have done step by step so that willy nilly now we are playing. Um, that is, and again, as I think we've demonstrated a couple of times, it's really easy not to notice certain things that you always and necessarily do. How this gets translated into text later is a completely different question. What matters
Yeah,
here is that you know.
I'm standing right between those two questions
Mhm.
because the big version of this book and the second half of the book, which is the more abstract, fluffy, difficult to express part about GMing and style and technique and approach and those
Mhm.
sorts of things. That's right where I am. So I've been taking notes, observing
Mhm.
myself over my own shoulder
Right.
for the last year. And
Excellent.
what I have now is a lot of red text. So red text is stuff that needs to be rewritten or
Hmm.
decided whether to be cut, or random thoughts
I
that need
use
to
the
be
same technique
incorporated.
myself. Go on. Hmm.
Okay, so I've got 100 pages of red text of me observing my process or pulling bits of smart things I said to people in a forum or something, and
Excellent.
they're
Hmm.
organized and they're organized as well. And now I'm at the point where when I read this stuff, I have a couple different problems. One of them is the obvious problem of just writing it and getting it in the right order so that it's pedagogy, so that
Hmm.
it's
Hmm.
easily understood, explained, and in the proper sequence. But a more intractable problem is the one about conveying the more stylistic or maybe artful is the right word,
Yeah, I think it's a very
from
good word.
teasing
Right.
the right. Um, And that's stuff that I want to talk about because I don't know if there's obviously there's not a right way to do it, but there are very few people. You're one of the very few people I can think of in the whole fucking world with whom I could have this conversation and already assume that we're at the same level.
Well, in this case, let's, for purposes of the consult, I'm going to take it as a given that once you've got your shit together to a certain percent, it will start translating into functional prose. I'm just going to take that as a given. My goal is actually to sort of, against your will, perhaps, to arm wrestle, to headlock you back into the earlier phase of this, where all we're doing is generating more red text and maybe better red text than what you currently have. So, because
Okay,
without even
yeah.
looking at it, I said that's why I said maybe, okay, because I have no guarantees about that. But the point is that to say, all right, let's really stay in this mode of play and talking to people rather than writing about it. Let's stay in this mode of talking about it, and I want to hammer this business of where are we all at and what are we actually having in hand? What steps did we take to get there? Once we do that, next time, then we're going to talk about that system stuff. Then we're going to talk about how there was this guy, didn't have an axe in his head and was breathing. And after we played for 20 minutes, dude has an axe in his head and he's not breathing, right? So I want to know really how that happens. And so that would be our next session, particularly not just in terms of that one event, but then how that turns into changes of different scales about different things. How do all kinds of objects at that time change? So
Well,
I'm
here's the thing.
well, but wait, that's for later.
And
Yeah.
I know that you need to, I know that you need to go. But I just want to say, everything you're saying, I have not only thought about, but actually addressed in my red text, and I'm more at the point where it's like, how much of this is truly conveyable without first assuming that you've been through a lab class,
Hmm.
right? It's kind of at that level.
Right. So that's the other question. And that's why I want you to consider the very probably unwelcome alternative of, instead of writing the explanatory textbook, writing the lab book.
Mm.
That's kind of where I'm. And if you don't, that's cool. but I want your head there for a while.
Yeah, yeah.
That's what this whole consult today has been about, trying to get your head into that kind of addressing of how to play. Does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I absolutely I appreciate it, and my left brain it definitely feels pinned.
Yeah.
You've got me in a hold right now. But I do appreciate it. Yes, because that is it's very easy for me to fly right over that.
Let's get then to that. I think I've got a, you would not believe how much more comfortable I feel about core having you talked through this. And even though you're like, but Ron, it's on page such and such, I'm like, look, the way
Yeah.
you're talking to me about it right now is infinitely more valuable than showing me that you're a good writer. So,
Okay.
and
I hear
and
that.
that I um, whether it's valuable to you or not, I think it is. Right? Again, no guarantees. But for me, it's very, very valuable to know that you're engaging with it in terms of another human. Um, so we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but I want to say that next time we'll do system guts stuff. And I have some questions about that um, were never addressed on the Forge. So hopefully you'll find them interesting.
Uh,
Okay,
I'm sure that I will, and I know that you need to go, so we'll have to do this later.
absolutely. Take care, Todd. I'll talk to you later.
You too. Bye bye.